Hare Krishna. Today we will be discussing the of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 2, text 60, translation and explanation. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. There are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses, but in spite of their endeavors, in the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishwamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into a sex enjoyment. Although the yogi was endeavoring for a sense control with the severe types of penance and yoga practice, and of course there are so many similar instances in the history of the world, therefore it is very difficult to control the mind and the senses without being fully Krishna consciousness. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot see such material engagements. A particular example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee, who says, "Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it and I spit at the thought." Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man has satisfied his hunger by sufficient quantity of nutrients and eatables. Maharaja Ambarisha also conquered a great yogi, Durvas Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Text 61, translation and explanation. One who restrains his senses and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. That the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse, and unless one is Krishna consciousness, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvas Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaja Ambarisa. The Durvas Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. King Ambarisha fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the bodies of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue is tasting the tulasi leaves offered to him, his legs is traveling to the holy place where his temple is situated, his head is offering obeisances to the Lord, and he desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all this qualification made him fit to become a Matpara devotee of the Lord. The word Matpara is most significant in this connection. How one can become a Matpara is described in the life of Maharaja Ambarisha. See Baladeva Vidyabhushana, a great scholar and acharya in the line of Matpara, remarks, Madbhakti Prabhavena Sarvendriya Vidya Purvika Swatma Dristi Sulabheti Bhava. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of a devotional service to the Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As the small flames within burn everything within the room, similarly Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kind of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes a meditation on Vishnu, and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something which is not the Vishnu form simply waste their time in a vain such after some Pantasmagoriya. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of the real yoga. Text 62, translation. While contemplating the object of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. One who is not Krishna consciousness is subjected to the material desires while contemplating the objects of senses. The senses require real engagements, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects, and the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna consciousness. Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for a sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal, and as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridasa Thakura was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by incarnation of Maya Devi, but Haridasa easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above mentioned verse of Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all material sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for a spiritual engagement in the association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not therefore in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses, by artificial repression, is sure ultimately to fail, for the slightest thought of the sense pleasure will agitate him to gratify his desires. Text 63 translation. From anger, delusion arises, from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. By development of Krishna consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in the service of the Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna consciousness artificially try to avoid material objects, and as a result, although they desire liberation from a material bondage, they don't attain to the perfect stage of renunciation. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of a material consciousness. For example, for impersonalists, the Lord or the Absolute, being impersonal, cannot eat, whereas an impersonalist try to avoid good eatables. A devotee knows that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and that he eats all that is offered to him in devotion. So after offering good eatables to the Lord, the devotee takes the remnants called prasadam. Thus everything becomes spiritualized and there is no danger of a downfall. The devotee takes prasadam in Krishna consciousness, whereas non-devotee rejects as its material. The impersonalist therefore cannot enjoy life due to his artificial renunciation, and for this reason, a slight agitation on the mind pulls him down again into the pool of material existence. It is said that such a soul, even though rising up in the point of a liberation, falls down again due to the not having a support in devotional service. Text 64 translation and explanation. One who can control his senses by practicing the regulated principles of a freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord and thus become free from all attachment and aversion. It is already explained that one may externally control the sense by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is very chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna consciousness, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act, not to act, is within his control because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. Text 65 translation. For one who is so situated in the divine consciousness, the threefold miseries of a material existence exist no longer. In such a happy state, one's intelligence soon becomes steady. Text 66 translation. One who is not in the transcendental consciousness can have neither a controlled mind nor steady intelligence, which there is no possibility of peace, and how can there be any happiness without peace? Unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in a fifth chapter that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, and that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only one can have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal of the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal, and when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and the friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in the distress and is without peace. However much one may make a show of a peace and spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness is the self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. Text 67 explanation. As a boat on the water is swept away by the strong wind, even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can carry away man's intelligence. Unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in the sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaja Ambarisa, all of these senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is correct technique for the controlled mind. Text 68 translation. Therefore, O mighty armed one whose senses are restrained from their object is certainly of a steady intelligence. As enemies are curbed by a superior force, similarly the senses can be curbed not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called sadhaka, or a suitable candidature for liberation. Text 69 translation. What is the night for all beings in the time of awakening for the self-control, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. There are two classes of intelligent men. The one is intelligent in material activities for the sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of the introspective sage or a thoughtful man are night for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of a materialistic man. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of a spiritual culture, whereas a man in the materialistic activities, being asleep of self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy, sometimes distressed, and some in his sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reaction. Text 70 translation. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like a river into the ocean, which is ever being filled up but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same steady. It is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything, because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the water of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in the activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by the desires of a sense gratification. That is a proof of Krishna conscious man. The one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification Although the desires are present, because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoys full peace. Others, however, who fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruitive workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so called material bondage. The devotee of Krishna has no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. Text 71 Translation. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all the senses of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for something Desire for becoming Krishna consciousness is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world. It is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, therefore everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense gratification, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best of ability. Desire for the satisfaction of Krishna is really desireless. It is not an artificial attempt to abolish desire. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he does not have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. The transcendental knowledge is based on self realization, namely, knowing perfectly well that every living entity is the eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and therefore the eternal position of a living entity is never to be the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principles of a real peace. Text 72 Translation. That is a way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. Being so situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of a God. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Kathavanga Maharaja attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering into Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of a materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of the material life, but Bhagavad-Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialistic, it is sufficient to know that one has to end his materialistic way of life. But persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna consciousness, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of a God and the devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane. To be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of a sense gratification, where in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of a Krishna consciousness, even during this time, is immediate attainment of a Brahman, and one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. Brahman is just the opposite of a matter. Therefore, Brahmastiti means not on the platform of a material activities. Devotional service to the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad-Gita as a liberated stage. Therefore, Brahmastiti is a liberation from material bondage. See, Sri Bhaktivedanta Thakur has summarized this second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as being the contents of the whole text. in the Bhagavad-Gita, the subject matter are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the content of the complete text. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the second chapter of Bhagavad-Gita in the matter of its contents. Thank you so much. It's been a little longer, but keep listening. And that concludes the chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Keep listening for chapter 3. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.